After 15 years of apartment living, saving every spare dollar and countless overtime shifts, I had finally done it. I had purchased my dream home in Oak Ridge Estates, a picturesque suburban neighborhood with tree-lined streets and houses that looked like they belonged in a magazine. My modest three-bedroom colonial sat on a quarter-acre lot with mature oak trees and enough space to finally indulge my gardening aspirations. The moving trucks had barely pulled away when my doorbell rang, revealing a middle-aged woman clutching a gift basket and wearing a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "Welcome to Oak Ridge Estates. I am Karen Matthews, president of the Homeowners Association," she announced, thrusting the basket into my hands. "Inside you will find our community guidelines, meeting schedule, and my personal contact information. We pride ourselves on maintaining property values through strict adherence to standards." I thanked her politely, set the basket aside, and spent the next few weeks settling in. My neighbors seemed friendly enough, especially Tom and Linda next door, who brought over homemade cookies and warned me in hushed tones about the monthly HOA inspections. "Just keep your grass cut and your trash cans hidden," Tom advised with a nervous glance toward Karen's house across the street. "She tends to focus on new residents until they fall in line." Spring arrived, and with it came my desire to create something special for the upcoming July 4th celebration. I had always dreamed of a patriotic garden, so I carefully selected wildflower seeds in red, white, and blue varieties that would bloom just in time for Independence Day. The county extension office had even recommended these native varieties as beneficial for local pollinators and drought-resistant. I spent an entire weekend preparing the soil, planting, and mulching my front garden bed, imagining how beautiful it would look when fully bloomed. The first seedlings had barely pushed through the soil when I found the notice taped to my door. "Violation, unauthorized landscape modification. All exterior changes must be approved by the Architectural Review Committee. Please remove immediately." It was signed by Karen Matthews with her title printed in bold letters beneath her elaborate signature. I called the number listed on the notice, explaining that these were simply seasonal flowers for a patriotic display. The bylaws clearly state that all landscape changes require prior approval, the administrative assistant informed me without emotion. The committee meets monthly. The next review is in 6 weeks. At the following HOA meeting, I stood before the board, photographs of similar wildflower gardens in hand, ready to explain my patriotic intentions. Karen sat at the center of the table, designer glasses perched on her nose as she examined my application with exaggerated thoroughness. "Mr. Adams, while we appreciate your enthusiasm, Oak Ridge Estates has standards to maintain," she declared, her voice carrying across the community center meeting room. "Wildflowers look unruly and attract insects. Your application is denied. You have 7 days to restore the approved lawn configuration." I attempted to explain the environmental benefits and temporary nature of my display, but Karen raised her hand, cutting me off mid-sentence. "Rules are rules. Without them, chaos ensues and property values plummet. Next item on the agenda." The following morning, I discovered a new notice taped to my door. This one was printed on bright orange paper with fine notice stamped across the top. $2,500 for unauthorized landscaping and failure to comply with HOA directives. The notice included payment instructions and a warning that continued noncompliance would result in additional penalties. Staring at that number, I felt something shift inside me. This was no longer about flowers. This was about power, control, and one woman's determination to break the will of anyone who challenged her authority. That evening, I pulled the massive HOA handbook from Karen's welcome basket and began a methodical search for any specific prohibition against wildflowers. After 3 hours of reading microscopic text and legal jargon, I had found numerous regulations about grass height, approved tree species, and even permitted birdbath designs, but nothing that explicitly banned wildflowers or dictated color schemes for garden beds. The landscaping section merely required that gardens be well-maintained and aesthetically consistent with community standards, subjective terms that could be interpreted however the board wished. The next day, I consulted with Professor Jenkins, a botany expert from the local university who specialized in native plant species. He visited my property, examined my fledgling garden, and provided a detailed assessment on university letterhead. These particular wildflower varieties are not only native to our region, but provide essential habitat for declining pollinator populations, he explained, adjusting his glasses as he made notes. Furthermore, once established, they require significantly less water than traditional turf grass, making them environmentally responsible choices for residential landscapes. Armed with his professional opinion and highlighted copies of the HOA bylaws, I submitted a formal appeal of the fine through the process outlined in the handbook. The appeal form required extensive documentation, notarized statements, and a non-refundable $150 administrative processing fee. I complied with every requirement, mailing the thick envelope via certified mail to ensure it could not be claimed, lost, or never received. 2 weeks passed with no acknowledgement of my appeal. My wildflowers continued to grow, small buds forming that promised a spectacular display come July. Then the personal inspections began. Karen Matthews appeared on my property almost daily, designer sunglasses pushed atop her perfectly highlighted hair, clipboard in hand. She photographed my garden from multiple angles, made exaggerated notes, and occasionally placed small flags next to plants she found particularly offensive. Documentation for the board, she explained with artificial sweetness when I confronted her about the constant surveillance. As HOA president, it is my responsibility to maintain complete records of all violations. A second fine notice appeared on my door the following Monday. The amount had doubled to $5,000 for continued noncompliance and deliberate disregard for community standards. The letter stated that my appeal had been reviewed and denied, though I had received no official notification of this decision, nor any explanation of the reasoning behind it. During this time, something unexpected began to happen. Anonymous notes appeared in my mailbox. "Stay strong," read one. "We are with you," said another. During evening walks, neighbors would give subtle nods of encouragement when Karen was not watching. Tom and Linda invited me over for dinner and confessed that they too had faced Karen's wrath when they installed a small water feature without approval 3 years prior. "She targeted us for months," Linda whispered, though we were safely inside their home. "We eventually gave in because we could not afford the fines. Most people do." The situation reached its breaking point when a certified letter arrived from the HOA's attorney. The fine had now escalated to $10,000, with threats of a property lien if not paid within 30 days. The letter also mentioned potential legal action for creating a public nuisance and willful damage to community aesthetic values. The most alarming part was the final paragraph, which suggested that foreclosure proceedings could begin if the situation remained unresolved. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at that impossible sum. My savings account held less than half that amount, money I had set aside for property taxes and emergency repairs. The home I had sacrificed so much to purchase now hung in the balance because I had dared to plant patriotic flowers in my own front yard. That night, sleep eluded me as I contemplated my options. Surrender would mean financial hardship and admitting defeat to a bully. Fighting seemed increasingly impossible against the machinery of HOA bureaucracy. There had to be another way, some angle I had not yet considered. The next morning, I called in sick to work, something I rarely did, and drove to the county record's office. If I was going to fight this battle, I needed to understand exactly who and what I was up against. The clerk seemed surprised when I requested all public records related to Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association, including financial statements, meeting minutes, and the original community covenant documents. "That is quite a lot of material," she commented, eyebrows raised. "We will need to pull records from multiple departments. It might take several hours." "I have all day," I replied, settling into a chair with my laptop and a large coffee. By mid-afternoon, I had accumulated a mountain of documents spanning the 15-year history of Oak Ridge Estates. What emerged from those pages was a pattern so clear, it was almost artistic. Karen Matthews had joined the board 8 years ago and became president within 18 months. Following her ascension, enforcement actions increased by 320%, with certain homeowners receiving multiple violations while others, notably board members and their friends, seemed immune to scrutiny despite similar infractions. The financial records revealed even more troubling information. The landscaping contract for community common areas had been awarded to Green Valley Services 4 years ago without competitive bidding, despite being significantly higher than market rates. A quick business registry search revealed that Green Valley was owned by the brother-in-law of another board member. Similar connections existed for the Security Patrol Service and the company that managed community pool maintenance. My most valuable discovery came when I examined the original property deeds and county zoning documents. Oak Ridge Estates had been built on land previously used as a family farm. The conversion to residential use had required special zoning exceptions, and these documents contained specific language about permissible land uses that remained with the property regardless of subsequent development. One particular clause caught my attention, references to continued recreational use rights, established in the original county ordinances. That evening, I visited Mitchell Harris, a lawyer friend who specialized in property law. I spread the documents across his desk, watching as he examined them with increasing interest. "This is fascinating," Mitchell said, tapping the recreational use clause. "Essentially, the original zoning approval maintained certain grandfathered rights for property owners that supersede HOA restrictions in specific circumstances. County ordinances trump HOA bylaws when they conflict directly." "What kind of recreational uses are we talking about?" I asked, feeling the first flutter of hope in weeks. "Well, according to this language, it includes traditional rural recreational activities consistent with the property's history," Mitchell explained, reading carefully. "That would typically include things like archery, hunting, fishing in existing water features, and, oh, this is interesting, shooting sports on properly constructed ranges." My pulse quickened. Shooting sports like a gun range. Mitchell nodded slowly. "If constructed according to county safety regulations and properly permitted, yes. The HOA could not legally prevent it because this zoning exception predates their covenant and is specifically protected by county ordinance." The next day, I attended a county commissioner meeting where zoning ordinances were being discussed. During the public comment period, I asked specific questions about recreational use provisions in residential areas, carefully avoiding mentioning my specific situation. The county attorney confirmed that grandfathered recreational use rights remained valid and enforceable, provided all safety and structural regulations were followed. Back home, I began meticulously documenting every interaction with the HOA. I installed security cameras covering my entire property, saved emails, photographed notices, and recorded phone conversations with appropriate legal disclosures. I created a spreadsheet tracking every house in the neighborhood with visible violations equivalent to or exceeding my wildflower garden, noting how selectively enforcement seemed to target certain homeowners. The plan taking shape in my mind required absolute compliance with county regulations while exploiting the loophole in the HOA's authority. I needed to be methodical and precise. One mistake would give Karen the ammunition to shut me down. I spent evenings researching county ordinances regarding recreational shooting facilities, printing construction specifications, safety requirements, and permit applications. Each document I collected became another piece in my retaliation arsenal. This would not be a reckless act of revenge, but a carefully orchestrated demonstration of the limits of HOA power when confronted with superior legal authority. As my wildflowers grew taller and began showing the first hints of red, white, and blue blooms, so did my determination to stand my ground against unreasonable demands and selective enforcement. The pieces were falling into place. Karen Matthews had built her power on intimidation and the assumption that no one would challenge her authority. She had never faced an opponent who understood the legal limitations of that authority. That was about to change. With my research complete and strategy formulated, I began the methodical process of turning my backyard into a fully compliant recreational shooting facility. My first stop was the county permitting office, where I submitted applications for construction approval, safety certification, and recreational use designation. The clerk processed my paperwork with professional indifference, explaining that site inspections would be required before final approval. "How long does the process typically take?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "For a residential recreational range, usually 3 to 4 weeks for the initial review and inspection," she replied. "Assuming everything meets code requirements, final approval comes about a week after that." I spent those weeks acquiring materials and preparing detailed construction plans. The county guidelines specified exact requirements for backstops, side berms, firing line construction, and safety signage. I meticulously followed every specification, often exceeding minimum requirements. The shooting range would be modest, just 25 yards long with 3 shooting positions. But its placement was strategic, positioned within clear view of Karen's home office window while remaining fully within my property boundaries. The lumber arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a truck that had to park partially on the street, ensuring maximum visibility to the neighborhood. I began construction immediately, driving support posts and framing the firing line structure. By mid-afternoon, Karen's silver Mercedes crept slowly past my house for the third time, her cell phone clearly visible as she documented my activities. When the framing was complete, I installed thick rubber matting and filled hundreds of sandbags for the backstop and side berms. The physical labor was exhausting, but each sandbag placed felt like another brick in the wall of my defense against HOA overreach. The county inspector arrived as scheduled, clipboard in hand, measuring distances and checking construction against approved plans. "You have done excellent work here," he commented, making final notes. "This exceeds safety requirements in several areas. I will recommend approval of your recreational facility permit." The bright orange, county-approved construction notice he posted at the edge of my property stood out like a beacon, visible from the street and, more importantly, from Karen's house. That same afternoon, I installed security cameras disguised as landscape lighting, positioned to capture any unauthorized entry to my property. The required safety signage arrived next, large, professionally printed warnings about authorized personnel only, hearing protection requirements, and range rules. I installed these at precisely the height and spacing required by county ordinance, each one secured with tamper-evident fasteners, so any interference would be immediately apparent. My final preparations involved creating a detailed logbook for range use, purchasing first aid kits and fire extinguishers as required by safety codes, and setting up a small storage shed for target equipment. Everything was done according to regulation, documented with photographs, and copied to a secure cloud storage account. As expected, the confrontation came swiftly. Karen Matthews appeared at my door the following morning, flanked by two other HOA board members. She wore her official expression of concern, though the tight line of her mouth betrayed her anger. "We have received multiple reports about unauthorized construction on your property," she began without greeting. "The HOA bylaws clearly state that all exterior structures require prior approval from the Architectural Review Committee." I smiled politely and retrieved a folder from the entry table. "I appreciate your concern, Karen. However, this is a county-approved recreational facility constructed under the grandfathered use provisions of the original property deed. Here are copies of all permits, approvals, and the relevant county ordinances." I handed her the folder, which she refused to take. One of the board members, a retired accountant named Robert, reached for it instead, flipping through the documents with growing concern. "This appears to be in order," he muttered, earning a sharp glare from Karen. "This is completely unacceptable," Karen snapped. "This structure violates multiple aesthetic guidelines and will create noise disturbances. The board will not allow this." "The county has already approved it," I replied calmly. "County ordinances supersede HOA regulations in matters of grandfathered recreational use. Everything has been constructed according to code, including noise abatement features that exceed requirements." Karen's face flushed with anger. "We will see about that. An emergency board meeting has been called for this evening. I suggest you attend if you wish to avoid further fines and potential legal action." As they walked away, I called after them. "Please be advised that this property is under video surveillance. Any attempt to interfere with county-approved construction will be reported to authorities." That evening, the community center meeting room was packed with curious neighbors. Many offered subtle nods of support as I took a seat near the back, my lawyer Mitchell beside me carrying a briefcase filled with documentation. Karen called the meeting to order with a sharp rap of her gavel. "We are here to address a serious violation of community standards," she announced. "As many of you may have noticed, there is unauthorized construction taking place that violates numerous provisions of our bylaws." For the next 20 minutes, she presented a slideshow of photographs of my property, close-ups of my wildflowers interspersed with images of my partially constructed range. Her voice grew increasingly strident as she detailed the threat to property values and safety concerns my project represented. When she finally concluded, Mitchell and I approached the podium. Without speaking, we distributed copies of the county permits, zoning documents, and relevant legal precedents to each board member. The room fell silent as they reviewed the materials. "My client has followed every applicable county ordinance and safety regulation," Mitchell explained, his professional tone a stark contrast to Karen's emotional presentation. "The recreational use rights are specifically protected by county law and predate the HOA covenant. You have no legal authority to prevent this properly permitted activity." The meeting dissolved into heated discussion, with board members huddling together while neighbors whispered among themselves. Several homeowners approached me afterward, asking questions about the permits and expressing their own frustrations with HOA overreach. What had begun as my personal battle was evolving into something larger, a challenge to the very foundation of Karen's authority. The seeds of resistance I had planted were beginning to sprout, much like my patriotic wildflowers that now showed definite hints of red, white, and blue, despite the ongoing attempts to force their removal. The day after the emergency meeting, 2 new violation notices appeared on my door. The first cited unauthorized construction with a $5,000 fine, while the second alleged creating a public nuisance with an additional $3,000 penalty. Both notices ignored the county approvals and grandfathered use rights demonstrated at the meeting. Karen was not backing down. Neither was I. The final components of my range were delivered and installed over the next 2 days. Safety barriers, target holders, and a small covered area to protect shooters from sun and rain. Each addition was photographed, documented, and time-stamped to create an indisputable record of compliance with all regulations. When construction was complete, I invited Tom and Linda from next door to inspect the facility. Tom had mentioned being a recreational shooter during one of our fence line conversations, though he had given up the hobby after moving to our HOA-controlled neighborhood. "This is impressive," Tom said, examining the substantial backstop and side berms. "You could safely shoot here all day without any risk to surrounding properties." "Would you like to try it out this weekend?" I asked casually. "I have planned a small gathering of friends for some target practice. All safety protocols will be followed, of course." Their enthusiastic acceptance was the beginning. That Saturday, 6 responsible adults gathered in my backyard for an afternoon of supervised target shooting. Each participant received a safety briefing, signed a liability waiver, and wore appropriate protective equipment. We used standard velocity .22 caliber rifles that produced minimal noise, especially with the sound dampening measures I had installed. Nevertheless, the rhythmic pop of small caliber fire carried across the neighborhood, not loud enough to violate noise ordinances, but certainly noticeable enough to attract attention. By mid-afternoon, Karen was stationed across the street, furiously documenting our activities with her camera and phone. The most surprising development came in the days that followed. Rather than universal outrage, the neighborhood reaction was decidedly mixed. Several neighbors requested invitations to future shooting sessions. Others expressed curiosity about the facility and the legal maneuver that had made it possible. A few voiced concerns about noise, but were satisfied when I explained the limited hours and sound mitigation measures. Karen attempted to rally opposition by going door to door with a petition demanding the HOA take immediate legal action. Her efforts yielded fewer signatures than expected. Many homeowners who had previously rubber-stamped her initiatives now hesitated, asking questions about the legal basis for her claims and expressing doubts about spending HOA funds on potentially unwinnable litigation. The following week, I expanded my range activities, hosting small groups each evening after work and longer sessions on the weekend. Each event scrupulously followed safety protocols and county regulations. I maintained detailed logs of all activities, verified that all participants met legal requirements, and conducted regular maintenance checks of all safety features. Karen's escalation continued as well. New fines appeared daily: noise violations, aesthetic violations, unauthorized gatherings. The amounts grew increasingly outrageous, soon totaling more than $25,000. HOA representatives photographed my property constantly, sometimes parking across the street for hours to document activities. Anonymous complaints were filed with various county departments, triggering multiple inspections that found no violations. The conflict reached a new level when I discovered someone had attempted to tamper with my backstop during the night. My security cameras captured clear footage of two individuals testing the structure and examining the support posts. Though their faces were not clearly visible, one person's distinctive gait strongly resembled Karen's. I reported the incident to the county sheriff's department, providing the video evidence and filing a formal complaint about attempted vandalism and potential safety endangerment. We take safety concerns regarding properly permitted facilities very seriously, the deputy assured me, reviewing the footage. We will investigate this incident thoroughly. That evening, I placed additional security cameras and motion-activated lights around the range. The next morning, I contacted Sheriff Thompson's office directly, explaining the ongoing situation and inviting him to personally inspect my facility to verify its compliance with all safety regulations. Given the community concerns and recent tampering attempt, I believe an official safety inspection by your department would help clarify matters for all parties, I explained. I want to ensure everyone understands that this is a professionally constructed, fully compliant facility that poses no risk to the neighborhood. To my surprise and relief, Sheriff Thompson agreed to visit the following day. His personal involvement would bring county authority directly into the conflict, potentially resolving the standoff once and for all. I immediately began preparing for this crucial inspection, knowing it represented my best opportunity to definitively establish the legitimacy of my response to HOA overreach. Sheriff James Thompson arrived at precisely 10 o'clock the next morning, his department SUV pulling into my driveway with official purpose. He emerged wearing his full uniform, badge catching the morning sunlight, accompanied by two deputies and the county safety compliance officer. Their presence created an unmistakable air of authority that drew curious glances from neighbors and brought several people to their front porches for a better view. "Good morning, Mr. Adams," the sheriff greeted me with a firm handshake. "I understand you have a newly constructed recreational facility you would like us to inspect." "Yes, Sheriff. Thank you for coming personally," I replied, leading them toward the backyard. "I have prepared all the documentation related to permits, construction specifications, and safety features for your review." As we rounded the corner of the house, Sheriff Thompson paused, taking in the full view of my range. His expression remained professionally neutral, but I noticed his approving nod as he examined the substantial backstop and side berms. "You have done your homework," he commented, accepting the binder of documentation I offered. "These specifications appear to exceed minimum requirements in several areas." For the next 45 minutes, the sheriff and his team conducted a thorough inspection. They measured distances, examined the backstop construction, tested the stability of all structures, and reviewed my safety protocols and logbooks. The compliance officer paid particular attention to the noise abatement features, using a decibel meter to record readings at various distances from the firing line. "Your sound dampening measures are quite effective," he noted. "The readings at your property line are well below ordinance limits." As the inspection continued, I noticed Karen's silver Mercedes parking across the street. She emerged with her ever-present clipboard, immediately beginning to photograph the official vehicles in my driveway. She was soon joined by two other board members, their urgent conversation just beyond hearing range, but their agitation clearly visible in their animated gestures. The inspection was nearly complete when two police cruisers arrived, lights flashing. Karen had apparently called the local police department, reporting suspicious activity at my address. The resulting jurisdictional confrontation created exactly the scene I had hoped to avoid, yet needed to resolve the situation once and for all. The city police officers approached cautiously, clearly confused by the presence of county sheriff vehicles. Sheriff Thompson stepped forward, badge visible, to address them. "Officers, I am Sheriff James Thompson, County Sheriff's Department," he introduced himself. "We are conducting an official safety inspection of this properly permitted recreational facility. Is there something we can help you with?" The lead officer glanced toward Corinne and her group, then back to the sheriff. "We received a call about unauthorized discharge of firearms in a residential area, sir." Sheriff Thompson nodded understanding. "I see. Well, as the chief law enforcement officer for the county, I can assure you that this facility is fully compliant with all applicable laws and safety regulations. We have just completed our inspection and found everything to be in proper order." He motioned to the compliance officer, who stepped forward with his clipboard. "All permits are current, construction meets or exceeds safety requirements, and noise levels are within legal limits. The recreational use is protected by grandfathered provisions in the original property deed and confirmed by county ordinance." The gathered crowd of neighbors had grown during this exchange, with at least 20 people now watching from various vantage points. The public nature of this official validation was precisely what I had hoped for, an undeniable, authoritative confirmation that my actions were legal and appropriate. Karen broke away from her group and approached, her face flushed with anger or embarrassment, possibly both. "Sheriff Thompson, I need to speak with you privately about this situation. There are community concerns that need to be addressed." Sheriff Thompson remained professionally composed but firm. "Ma'am, any discussion about this property needs to happen here, in the presence of the property owner. This is not a matter for private conversation." "But the Homeowners Association has specific regulations that prohibit," Karen began. "Ma'am," the sheriff interrupted politely but firmly, "I understand your concerns, but my jurisdiction involves county ordinances and safety regulations, not private HOA bylaws. This property owner has followed every applicable law and safety regulation. My official inspection confirms that this is a properly constructed and permitted facility that poses no safety risk to the community." His voice carried clearly across the gathered crowd, the official verdict delivered publicly and unequivocally. Karen stood speechless, her authority visibly diminishing as neighbors witnessed this definitive ruling from a county official whose authority far exceeded her own. Before departing, Sheriff Thompson handed me a signed inspection certificate. "This certifies that your facility meets all county safety requirements. Keep this with your other documentation. If you experience any interference with your legal use of this property, please contact my office directly." As the official vehicles pulled away, neighbors lingered, many approaching me with questions and comments. Some openly expressed admiration for my stand against HOA overreach, while others requested information about joining future shooting sessions. Karen and her supporters retreated to her house across the street, their hasty departure a tacit acknowledgement that the balance of power had shifted dramatically. The wildflowers in my front yard, now in full patriotic bloom, seemed to wave victoriously in the afternoon breeze. The aftermath of the sheriff's visit reverberated through Oak Ridge Estates like ripples in a still pond. Word spread rapidly about the official inspection and the sheriff's public validation of my range. What had begun as my isolated stand against HOA tyranny transformed into a community awakening about the limits of HOA authority and the importance of knowing your legal rights as a property owner. 3 days after the inspection, another emergency HOA board meeting was called. This time, the community center was standing room only, with homeowners crowding the space and spilling into the hallway. Karen called the meeting to order, her usual confidence noticeably diminished as she faced the unprecedented attendance. The board has consulted with legal counsel regarding the unauthorized structure at 1842 Oak Ridge Drive, she announced, avoiding eye contact with the audience. We have been advised of certain jurisdictional complexities that require further review. Mitchell and I had anticipated this approach. When the floor opened for comments, we were ready. Mitchell stepped to the podium, placing a thick document on the table before the board. My client has prepared a comprehensive response to all outstanding fines and allegations, he stated calmly. This document outlines our intent to file a countersuit for harassment, selective enforcement, and procedural violations should the HOA pursue further action against my client's legally permitted activities. He distributed copies to each board member, the top page clearly displaying the significant monetary damages we were prepared to seek. As they reviewed the document, uncomfortable shifting and whispered consultations spread across the board table. The meeting took an unexpected turn when an anonymous board member had apparently distributed copies of questionable financial transactions to every person present. Contracts with family members of board members, unexplained expenditures, and maintenance fees for services that appeared to have never been performed. "Point of order," called Tom from the audience, standing with one of these documents in hand. "I move that we discuss these financial discrepancies before any further action regarding individual homeowner violations." The room erupted in calls of agreement. Karen's attempts to maintain order failed as homeowner after homeowner stood to voice long-suppressed concerns about selective enforcement, financial transparency, and abuse of authority. The carefully maintained facade of board unity crumbled as 3 members abruptly resigned their positions, citing personal reasons, but clearly fearing personal liability for financial irregularities. The motion to drop all fines against my property passed with unanimous approval from the remaining board members, Karen's abstention a silent admission of defeat. A subsequent motion established a committee to review all HOA bylaws and enforcement procedures, with a mandate to ensure fairness and consistency moving forward. As the meeting concluded, a spontaneous gathering formed in the parking lot. Neighbors who had previously avoided eye contact now approached with handshakes and words of support. Several shared their own stories of intimidation and unreasonable fines, creating an impromptu therapy session for victims of HOA overreach. A community meeting was scheduled for the following week to nominate new board members and begin revising the bylaws. The turnout was unprecedented, with nearly every household represented. Volunteers stepped forward for board positions who had previously avoided involvement, bringing fresh perspectives and a commitment to reasonable governance. My compromise came easily in this new atmosphere of cooperation. I agreed to additional landscaping around the shooting range, limited hours of operation, and safety briefings for any interested neighbors. These reasonable accommodations were formalized in revised bylaws that balanced individual property rights with community standards. My patriotic wildflower garden remained untouched, now joined by similar displays in other front yards as homeowners began exercising their right to personal expression within reasonable guidelines. The revised landscaping rules emphasized environmental sustainability and native plants, encouraging rather than restricting thoughtful gardening choices. The most satisfying development came 6 weeks later when a "for sale" sign appeared in front of Karen's house. According to Tom, who had become the new HOA secretary, she had accepted a job in another state. Her departure was marked by neither celebration nor animosity, simply a quiet acknowledgement that her approach to community governance had been fundamentally flawed. As I sat on my back porch that evening, watching fireflies rise above my wildflower garden, I reflected on the strange journey from homeowner to revolutionary. What began as a simple desire to plant patriotic flowers had evolved into a community transformation and a powerful lesson about standing up to bullies. Sometimes the most important victories come not from aggression, but from simply knowing your rights and having the courage to exercise them, even when faced with seemingly insurmountable opposition. My home was truly mine again, and our neighborhood had rediscovered the meaning of community in the process.